What's going on, everybody? I'm making this video a little earlier than I originally planned because I actually made some different adjustments to my gallery since my last video approximately a week ago. I know I said in my last video that I thought my gallery was set and that I was kind of keeping a reserve of some money in terms of watching transfers or making some additional moves before the season start for Japan, Argentina, Brazil, etc. So there have been some big transfer news in the last week or so for a lot of players from MLS and Argentina, various places. So I want to make another video to go over some additional changes that I've made to get ready for Contender in 2025, kind of explain my rationale, and then maybe even explore some possible lineups that I might be able to build or put together once the season's underway for all of the Contender leagues, such as Brazil, Argentina, and Japan. I don't play every single league in Contender. I don't use, for example, Bundesliga 2 or League 2 in France, for example. I pretty much stick just to Liga MX, Superliga in Argentina, the J League in Japan. I really don't stray outside of Latin America and Asia. Also, I guess you can count Brazil now. Last time I made this video, or last time I made a video, that was before the big update by sorare. So now that Brazil is a part of Contender, I've actually been looking at some Brazilian cards. I've actually already picked up, as you can see, Jefferson Savarino, who plays for Botafogo, the team in Brazil that actually won Brazil Serie A last season. They're the best team in the league. So let me just go through a quick rundown of what's going on in my gallery since the last video. So in the last video, I kind of wrapped up with kind of the stacks that I was building, the stacks I was going to roll with, just Kashima Antlers, Necaxa stack, uh, some Yokohama Marinos forwards, uh, some Boca players. I'm putting their Boca offense stack with Herrera and Velasco. River stack I'm in building because now Driussi is officially a River player. In my last video, I mentioned that he was probably going to Estudiantes. He actually ended up going to River, which is even better. I think he ended up being the second most expensive transfer for River in club history. So you know that he's going to basically be one of those core players going forward for River. So it actually worked out even better than I thought. And it's good for me because I bought his forward card. There are very, very few forward cards for him available on the market. So I think if I end up selling him at some point, I'll be able to get a decent price for him because, as far as I'm aware, he only has midfielder cards for the most part, only a handful of forwards. And I'm not entirely sure what he'll get at River Plate. He might get midfielder cards again if he ends up playing the 10. He might, if he plays the 9, I can see them giving him forward cards again, which would again reduce his price. I mean, it means that I wouldn't get as good of a deal if I decided to sell him down the road. But regardless, he's currently in my plans going forward. So I'm not really looking at it as a sale angle. I think he actually might be able to be in one of my more elite lineups from week to week. All right, so let's look at what I've done differently since last week. So uh, what I started to do, as you can see with the first card that I'm looking at here, I picked up Gonzalo Montiel. He is looking to be one of the wingbacks or fullbacks for River Plate. He's going there along with Martinez Quarta from Europe. He is looked at by fans as a definite starter. He's one of the most exciting transfers in their opinion. I think when you're looking to buy players or add players to your gallery or to speculate on people, it's really good to look at what the fans think about that player. Right? If they're really excited, if they think he's the guy, he's one of the big star signings of the off season, then you kind of have to trust that they at least to some degree they know what they're talking about. They know what the team needs. Fans are super excited about Montiel. They think he is a for sure starter in that offense. In that defense. And as we know, River Plate, one of the best teams in the league, they oftentimes will bully their opposition, and their defense scores really, really well a lot of the time. So I picked him up. I will see who the starting River Plate goalie is. Because I have Martinez Quarta and Montiel, it would definitely make sense for me to get the River Plate goalie. So we'll see who's starting in goal at the start of the season. Um, I think there's still a bit of up in the air about who that might be. If I'm wrong, somebody let me know. But after the first couple games of the season, I'll see who's started in net, starting goal, and then go from there. So, but for right now, I basically am building a replay stack with Martinez Quarta, Driussi, and Montiel, and then I'll see who I can maybe pick up as a midfielder, and then who I should get as the goalie once I kind of get a feel for who that established goalkeeper is supposed to be for them. I also picked up Daniel Schmidt. He is transferring from the Belgian league to Nagoya Grampus. He's going to be the locked-in, nailed starting goalie for Nagoya. There are a lot of goalies in Japan that are not necessarily locked in. A lot of teams where a couple bad performances and they'll start experimenting with goalies. This should not be the case with Schmidt. He is going to be the nailed guy. He's basically their star signing of the offseason, the successor to Langrak. So picked him up for only a little under $4. I think if he ends up being what he could be at Nagoya, which is again their nailed starter, which is again is very hard to find in Japan, that price should go up pretty significantly. I'm thinking if I decide to sell him for some point during the season, especially maybe in the summer when J League is one of the only leagues playing in the world that's covered, I could sell that for easily for double if things go the way I think they could go. I also picked up Carlos Carrizo. A lot of the stuff I'm going to go through now are kind of speculative buys. Um, I don't have a lot of faith that these are all going to become, out of the park signings by me, but I figured there's some things that I purchased that were worth speculating on in case they, are mind blowing players at their new clubs. Carlos Carrizo, he was a starter for Augsburg, and then he transferred to San Jose Earthquakes. He was with Earthquakes for a while. Now he's signing with LDU Quito. I believe that's the Ecuadorian league. I think it's the best team in Ecuador. And so when you have a guy going to the best team in a league, and a guy who's expected to for the most part be a starter, or be in that solid, the start of rotation for the most part, it's really hard to pass it up, right? He's a defensive midfielder, so you're not looking at him to be a guy who's going to score a lot of decisives. But again, a guy who's going to be playing midfield on the best team in the league gives him a pretty good shot at having some really high AA on a consistent basis. In my opinion, I think his ceiling could be something like Wilmar Barrios at Zenit, where he's a defensive midfielder, but he pretty consistently scores in the 60 range just off of AA alone. So if he does get decisive for whatever reason, you're looking at a really high ceiling rate in like 80, 90 plus with the decisive. So took a gamble because he had a really favorable transfer. Again, going to the best team in Ecuador, and he should be one of the better players on that team because of his European pedigree and his pedigree as a DP player with the San Jose Earthquakes. All right, let's go up to the top here. I already kind of mentioned him earlier, but I picked up Jefferson Savarino. He's a winger slash forward for Botafogo, again, the best team in Brazil last season. I picked him up because Wendell, guy I talked about last week, he's actually transferred to Botafogo as well. This is a pretty big deal. Wendell's going to Botafogo, and then on the flip side, Luis Enrique is going to Zenit. So it's kind of a flip flop in terms of players between Botafogo and Zenit. So Wendell will probably be playing the 8 position, if I had to guess, in that central midfield for Botafogo. That's where I would expect him to wind up. But I mean, he's going to be one of their star signings for the offseason. Wendell should be a pretty consistent starter for them. I know there's a lot of rotation in Brazil because they play a lot of games. They have a lot of competitions, a lot of games across the year. But I think more often than not, he'll be a pretty reliable starter for those league games. So wanted to pair a forward with him. That way I could get a Botafogo stack. Again, if they're a really good team in Brazil, and when you can stack players from one of the best teams in the league, I think it makes a lot of sense to do so. So I'll be looking to run a Savarino Wendell offensive stack in Contender pretty often. If everything goes according to plan, I could see them being in one of my better lineups, one of my Division One lineups, for example, on a pretty consistent basis. Maybe even an all-star lineup or a special weekly lineup, because I really think the sky's the limit with these guys in terms of the correlated offensive stack that they could be. Mateus Bogus, again in the past week, he has gone from LAFC to Cruz Azul. Um, I think he's going to end up being maybe the 10 or one of those core attacking midfielders for Cruz Azul. He's a very big signing. I think they signed him for like $9 million, which again for Liga MX is a pretty big deal. It was one of the biggest signings for them in a while. After Yorgos Yakimakis last year, so I picked him up again, kind of the same strategy as Savarino. I wanted somebody to pair with Yorgos Yakimakis, who's the starting forward for Cruz Azul. Again, Cruz Azul, one of the best teams in Mexico, pretty consistently make the playoffs, pretty consistently get far or deep into the playoffs every season in Mexico. So now I don't just have Yagamakis on an island in a lineup. I could actually pair him with Bogus and hopefully get some of those, correlated offensive decisives, just an assist and goal together once in a while. I think that could be pretty huge for my gallery. So picked him up. I spent a fair bit. I'm spending about $4.40 on Bogus. This is a little inflated because of the price of ETH was a bit lower when I made the purchase. So I spent about $4.40 on him. Um, that's a little pricey for a Liga MX midfielder, but I think it's worth the risk because, again, he could be a really big stud for them. Again, he's on one of the best teams in the league. And so I just really wanted an opportunity to run a correlated offensive stack together for Cruz Azul when they have favorable fixtures, such as against Puebla or Juarez or Querétaro, things like teams like that often struggle in Liga MX. The last two I just picked up today. Picked up Benjamin Rollheiser not because he's transferred already, but because I think a transfer back to Latin America is imminent for him. I think he probably finishes out the season with Benfica. Benfica don't want to let him go on a loan, but I think if they get a permanent transfer from one of the better clubs in Argentina or Brazil, I think he goes back there. So I bought him for just $1. Again, really low risk, high reward type situation. Botafogo and I think some other clubs, some other really good clubs in Argentina also put in some loan bids for him. Benfica rejected those loan bids because they'd rather it be a permanent transfer, an actual transfer deal. So the fact that the fact that bids are coming in for him from really good clubs in Latin America, make me feel pretty optimistic that he will transfer back to Latin America soon, and that he'll be a star player in Latin America once again, whether that be Argentina or Brazil. I think that's pretty soon. Again, I don't think it's going to be now in this offseason window, but I think maybe in the summer, Benfica offloads him, or maybe even the following winter offseason for Latin America, he heads back there. So this is not a guy I expect to use at all for a lot of 2025 or even all of 2025. This is just me doing a very speculative buy now of a guy who has extremely high ceiling, like a star tier or a tier 1 level card, if he goes back to Latin America. So again, I'm going to sit on this for a while. Like I said, I might be sitting on this for a year until the next winter off season. But I'm picking up a guy for $1 when I think this guy could easily be going for 10 times that amount once he transfers back to a really good Brazilian club or a really good Argentinian club. Because I think if he transfers, it's going to be to a good club, one of the top clubs in Latin America. He's not going to transfer to a bottom feeder because of how good he was before he transferred and because of his pedigree, just as a player that he's shown over the past few seasons. And the last guy I picked up is Facundo Farias. He was a DP signing for Inter Miami. He was originally from Argentina, played for Cologne before becoming a DP signing. He got injured fairly early into the MLS season last year, so he missed most of the year. As you can see, he's got an L15 of 0 because he's missed most of 2024 in the MLS. So because he missed most of the season, he is dirt cheap. I picked him up for like 66 cents, literally less than $1. And he is about to head back to Argentina. There's some really reputable reports of him going either to Racing or to Estudiantes. I think either one of those is a really favorable transfer for him. I think he's got a good chance to score well there, to be a nailed starter once he earns his spot. I think he'll probably have to fight for that spot early on because he'd be a new guy, but he's extremely talented. I mean, he was a DP signing in MLS for a reason, so I think he's got a really good chance of getting himself a starting 11 spot at one of the better clubs in Argentina once again. So again, these last 7 purchases or so, these 7 guys, mainly speculation in terms of how good I think they can be. So I know I'm going to have some losses. I know I'm going to have some losers at some point. Some of these guys are not going to pan out the way I thought or to the degree that I thought. But if even a few of these guys do what I think could happen, which is be a star player, become a tier 1 card or a star level card, I'm looking at some pretty good lineups. And then when I decide to sell, if I decide to sell, some potential solid profit throughout 2025.